Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So throughout this new IRI podcast series, we're going to be talking to the leaders of the IRI businesses to explore how the FMCG industry is adapting to the world in which we find ourselves in 2020. And our first guest is our German Managing Director, Christoph Knoke. Hello and welcome, Christoph.
Thank you very much. Hello, welcome from my side.
So it would be useful, I think, for our listeners if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and just share a really brief overview of IRI Germany, please.
Sure. Thank you very much, Chloe. So I've been with IRI now for 10 years, took over the leadership for IRI Germany 4 years ago. And actually, before joining IRI, I've been with strategic and management consulting for 12 years. IRI Germany has been in the market now for 26 years. So we are covering retail panel in Germany for all important retail channels, as well as some e-commerce for fast-moving consumer goods. Both manufacturer and retailers are our clients.
Thank you, Christoph. So to start off with, I suppose the word unprecedented has been used more times than I can count this year, and everybody has seen so much change across the world. So whether that be change in the way we live, change in the way we behave, the way we interact with each other. So what is the situation in Germany at the moment, just so we can set a bit of context for our listeners?
Yeah. So right now we are facing some increasing numbers of corona incidents, and carefully following that. That means for some more local regions or cities, actually, some more counteractions are actually taking place. Mm-hmm. But so far, how we actually went through the crisis has been managed very well by the government, I would say, and not too much impact also compared with other countries.
Yeah, so we often see Germany being kind of lauded as a good example across Europe as to how they've dealt with the coronavirus pandemic. But if we think now of specifically change within FMCG, so if we were able to look back 12 months to the German market to kind of get a picture of what the German market was and what's changed, therefore, in the last 8-9 months, that would be really interesting.
So like 12 months back, what we had already seen in the market is that actually over the last 2-3 years, the trip frequency had been reduced, also heavily driven by the younger consumers and shoppers who tended not to visit stores as frequent as the other generations did. Private label was always rather strong in Germany, with market shares around 30%, but had come to a stop in terms of growth over the past 2 years. Meaning because of quite good economic situation in Germany, the focus was more towards value added and more innovative products, and that was favoring also more branded goods. Private label was trying to get a hand on some of the developments in value add, so developed into higher priced sections as well, but had a sort of natural barrier there to grow even further. We have a heritage of very strong price sensitivity in Germany, high market share of discounters such as Aldi and Lidl in the market, As you know, Aldi and Lidl being invented and founded in Germany. So that's been something we had seen over the past years with some release because of the economic welfare and growth before the pandemic actually happened. Yeah, so I think,
Okay.
and we had seen that the growth in the market on FMCG was more related to price, so therefore growth more coming from value add and price increases than from real higher consumption rates. And then when the pandemic actually kicked in, what we could see obviously in at the first hand, the focus was clearly on stockpiling, on covering the general personal demand, and therefore focus when selecting the stores and the channel where the shoppers would buy was clearly on fast, easy, low hassle shopping, nearby shopping, one-stop shopping, and therefore favoring not the discounters such as Aldi and Lidl, and not specialized stores like drug stores, which are in general very important in the German market as well, but clearly favoring supermarkets, hypermarkets, carrying a broad selection of assortment and being nearby, and so therefore the first choice for the shoppers. Other than that, obviously, planning has been more in the focus of shoppers. So that means that shoppers were more writing lists again and selected carefully what they wanted to buy. And so promotions price not being really in focus at the point of high pandemic crisis in March to, let's say, May. And
Yeah.
that's been slightly shifting ever since, but that's some of the most important developments we had seen at that time.
Yeah, and actually, some of what you were saying was similar to what we saw in the UK. So people shopping in one store, getting everything that they could, shopping less frequently. So very similar behaviour to the UK. So now you're starting to see COVID-19 incidents increase in the same way as we are in the UK. Are you starting to see any changes in those behaviours? Are they going back to what they were in kind of April, May time, or did they never really change during the summer?
Well, first of all, the incidents have been rising very recently on higher rates, so therefore it is too early to really be able to see some real change, and whether that change it will be increasing over the next weeks or not.
In the UK, for example, supermarkets were concerned that shoppers would revert back to those kind of early days when there was panic buying. So they've been implementing restrictions on the number of items, particularly in those key categories, flour, toilet paper, those types of things, to try and curb any kind of panic buying. I wondered if you'd seen any early signs of that in Germany.
No, in fact, in Germany, that's been not the case so far. So we don't see any signs for panic buying again, stockpiling again. So that seemed to be not the case right now.
Okay. So how did, thinking about the changing shopper behaviour, how did retailers and brand owners adapt to, or how are they continuing to adapt to the changing behaviours? What are they doing that is different to what they were doing before?
So for some of the things, it's interesting what they are now picking up again in terms of what they are doing. So something that they had stopped during the high time of Corona crisis, and that is, for example, they are again heavily counting on bringing promotions back to the stores, something they had stopped during the lockdown and during high time of Corona. And that is heavily pushed by discounters, for example, to win back some of the market shares. And as consequence, supermarkets and hypermarkets are following that example, not to lose some of the market shares that they had gained. And obviously, all retailers still are very concerned about hygienic environment and security of the customers. That is absolutely on top of the minds of the shoppers, that retailers need to ensure that that is in place. So they continue, for example, to that it's mandatory to either carry a basket or have a card to actually go shopping, and that's how they limit the number of people going to the stores. That will be continuing. And on the other hand, clearly focus on replenishment of the products that are needed.
Yeah.
And so that is those are some of the measures that are taken by the retailers addressing the focus of the shoppers.
Yeah, and some of those sound very similar to what we're seeing here. And interestingly, to try and maintain availability on shelf, we've seen some fairly significant reductions in range across some categories in the UK to focus on those core products. Are you seeing any changes in range and assortment in German stores?
We do see some change for the assortments, but only on a very low scale. So so definitely not comparable to what you're seeing and experiencing in the UK.
Okay.
And some of the things that we have been seeing is that it's definitely much harder for new products to get on the shelf. So the number of new products versus previous year and previous time is clearly down, even though some of them have picked up again over the recent couple of months. But that is one thing. The other is some of the still innovative and niche products are not on the shelf anymore. So those those have been taken out in order to more focus on the relevant assortment. And we had seen a clear tendency, especially in high time of Corona, and that might be then again be the case for weeks if we see a further growing of incidents and some more strict actions taken. As consequence, we see that private label replenishment is more in the focus than the replenishment of the one or the other manufacturer brand.
Ah, that's interesting. And actually, I don't think that's something that we are seeing in the UK. Is that purely driven by the dominance of discounters in Germany, or is that a more strategic decision on the part of retailers?
I personally think it's a more tactic, not a real strategic decision. Yeah,
Okay.
But it addresses a chance, at least for some of the categories. If a shopper wants to buy some goods, like let's take hygienic care and other supplies, then he's taking what's on shelf. And that means even though we might not have been thought about buying private label before, he's easier to choose private label if that is offered, and other brand that he wanted to choose would not be on shelf.
Okay.
So and since margin is higher on private label for retailers, so that is the driver for that action, at least for some retailers in some categories. Yeah, not throughout all.
Okay, so it's not necessarily part of a longer term plan to increase the share of private label. It's more about having choice available for the shopper. at
Right.
at a time when the shopper just needs something and they're less concerned about the brand.
That's right. And in terms of change of assortment, local products are getting more in focus of consumers. Sustainability and healthy food and nutrition is getting back on the agenda of shoppers, and so those are developments we would expect for the next month and next years to be extremely important when to define assortment and when to define what to produce from manufacturer perspective.
So that the health and nutrition is interesting. Is the health and wellness trend in Germany off the back of the pandemic, or is this an underlying trend that has just accelerated recently?
Yeah, it's an underlying trend that we had seen before the pandemic already. And let's say, on the one hand, some of those trends have been set back in the time of stockpiling and lockdown,
Yeah.
but then regained power and refueled, so to say, and are going to increase over the next months. Yeah.
So would you expect new products to have more of a health and wellness focus to them?
Yes, I would. And same with sustainable packaging and environmental friendly packaging and things like that. So
Mm.
that will be relevant, even though I would also expect that at the time where recession is impacting more and more, that nevertheless shoppers might say they would like to turn more towards those sustainable products and healthier food, but only if they can afford it.
Yeah, and I think in the short to medium term, we've talked in various publications about the divide or the growing divide between. I think in one publication we called the groups the haves and the have-nots. What, however you want to label them, there is this growing divergence between people who are living to a fairly tight budget and people who obviously aren't, and we're seeing that divide get bigger in the UK. I'm making the assumption it's the same in Germany, but I don't know if that's a
It
correct
is.
assumption.
You're
Yeah,
absolutely right, Chloe. That is something that we are seeing. That is something that also the government is looking at. That the gap between the poorer and the richer person who have more ability to choose is getting bigger and bigger, and that will be something we will see during the recession.
and thinking about a retailer and a brand response to that growing gap, how do you think what will they do to cater for this kind of these polarized groups of people, do you think?
I mean, as you said, it's about polarizing. It's also about like an hourglass to offer the one and offer the other. Yeah,
Yeah.
not to neglect the one or the other group of shoppers or consumers. And so that will be, on the one hand, strengthening the price entry solutions, strengthening some of the private label on the one hand, but also a lower price branded good as a choice, and at the same time looking at, okay, what are the groups that can demand more, that can afford to spend more money to ensure that the assortments, innovative assortment, value-added assortment is on the shelf as well. And
Mhm.
maybe then cutting more and more of the middle, if you want to say so,
Yeah.
and in order to be able to manage this polarized assortment and polarized development.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because for a lot of categories, it will probably mean a complete rethink of the structure of the category, certainly from a tiering perspective. The makeup of categories may well look very different.
You are right in the sense when I look at what happened in Germany over the past years, yeah, during economic wealth, and even though we only had modest growth over the past couple of years, nevertheless, we had seen clear tendency of upgrading of the assortment on shelf. Yeah, starting from private label, upgrading into higher quality and price tiers, as well as manufacturers. Room for many innovations, room for addressing more or less even small groups of consumers and shoppers. And there are developments that will be slightly cut back.
Mm.
And on the other hand, the big trends and big demands will always have room in the assortment and on shelf of the retailers. I mean, nevertheless, there are some developments that I would expect from the future, because up to now, shoppers have not really experienced a high cut in their pocket.
No.
So that means we are now turning more towards recession,
Mm.
and with shoppers expecting that it will be a higher cut in what they have to spend and can be consuming.
Yeah.
This will lead to a slightly higher share for private label,
Mm-hmm.
and will very likely also lead to discounters winning back some share of the trips of the shoppers in the next months. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that, again, that we anticipate in the UK. There's been there've already been some initiatives implemented by UK retailers in advance of those times to try and prevent, I suppose, the discounters from gaining too much share, which is something that we saw in previous recession. So what we're seeing in the UK, and it'd be interesting to know if this is mirrored in Germany, because I don't believe it is. What we're seeing is fewer promotions, but more of a focus on everyday low price, and keeping it simple for the shopper. So we're seeing a big push from UK retailers on that. But from what you were saying earlier, it sounds like in Germany, the mechanic is more around promotions to get to the low price, not that everyday low price. Is that correct?
That's correct in general, and but we do have some retailers that are claiming everyday low price and don't participate in a hilarious run for promotion. Yeah, but those are only few examples.
And just quickly, I'd like to pick up on your point about local.
Yeah.
So the growing trend of people in Germany to purchase what brands that are produced locally.
Yes. And I mean, Corona in this instance is a nice example of where can it be supportive
Mm-hmm.
in terms of shopper's choice, because we believe it's been and from what shoppers played back in the survey that we conducted,
Mm-hmm.
it's a conscious choice for more local products, also to actually support the local manufacturers, because they know if the local manufacturers cannot afford to be on the market anymore, it would mean more jobs being lost in the local areas, in the regions, and that will harm, at the end of the day, diversity of the assortment, that will harm the entire economic situation of a city, of a location, of a region.
Mm.
And so that's been quite an interesting push for local brands that we have seen over the past months, and just strengthening the trend that we had there before.
Mm. So it's almost like a sense of community, isn't it? To
Yeah,
support your community.
yeah,
Which,
that's a nice Yeah, that's a nice comparison. Yeah, call it community.
yeah. Okay. So obviously you're having lots of conversations with brand owners and retailers all the time in Germany. So what are their biggest concerns, both in the short and the long term? What are they telling you?
I mean, obviously, one of the biggest concern is also because now it's the time for planning for the next year. It's how to actually proper forecast the demand for the next month and for the whole next year. So that is on top of their mind, given that there's a high uncertainty, given that the current developments when it comes to corona incidents is also actually carrying high uncertainty for further development. So that's one thing on top of their mind. The other question is, given the situation, should they actually be spending more or same money on media, or what would be the impact if they would cut media spendings?
Yeah.
And similar to that, okay, what is actually the right price they should be looking at for and promote for their products, even though that is at the end of the day the choice of the retailers. It is necessary for the manufacturers to have a clear view on what might be the right move in terms of pricing for the products and what might be the right move for the assortment. Those are things that are on top of the minds.
So thinking just closer to home then of our own IRI business, I'm interested to know how the German business has adapted to what are significant changes in the way that we're all working. Obviously, in the UK, we've now got over 300 people working from home, and we have really focused and are really proud of the fact that we've managed to maintain high levels of service delivery. We've spent a lot of time and energy focused on our thought leadership program, for example, to try and steer our clients through these kind of muddy waters. So how have the German team adapted throughout the course of the last 8 months to support IRI colleagues and our clients?
Right. So, I mean, interestingly, we said, okay, let's care for our colleagues, our employees first. So similar to what the UK and other countries of IRI did, we set up all capabilities to be able to work from home. And we still are, even though we have opened the office for like up to 15% of our employees to come there on weekly basis, also to ensure that if they need to go to the office to fix some things, they can, but at the same time ensuring that their health and safetyness is actually there, and we can manage that. When it comes to our clients, in fact, we have been, similar to what you've seen in the UK, we've been increasing the servicing. On the one hand, we put tactical forecasting for the next quarters. And even if we make a forecasting for 12 months, so split it into 4 quarters, and then we offer our clients to redo that forecasting every month or every 2 months to include the latest development and implications for the demand as soon as we can. Yeah, so
Okay.
that is one thing addressing that perspective, and we even offer forecasting models that are tailored to client needs, perspectives, take in category-specific factors that drive the demand and that are even more advanced. As for top priority, we put more timely and current reporting as a free of charge service for them. So on weekly basis, we are reporting on category developments and the impact of Corona and what it does to different channels, development to private label versus branded products, what it does to the different categories. Also, when it comes to the look at inflation development in the categories. So those are weekly reports that we are sharing with our clients also on cross-country benchmarking. What we usually have is, at least for the bigger manufacturers or retailers, presentations or workshops like twice a year to actually address, on the one hand, the market development and the development of the particular brands and competitive environment of our clients. And those have been clearly physical, to manage that in the past. So we had stopped the physical presentations and but have made very good experience with turning that into virtual sessions.
Yeah.
And obviously, one of the key priorities for myself were to very early come up with some white paper on what to expect from the crisis, what reactions from the shoppers to expect, as well as what actions manufacturers and retail clients should consider to take. And we've been reviewing that recently, also backed by a comprehensive shopper survey that we had done to check whether the assumptions that we had been taken are wrong, where the further developments would go. What does it mean for the actions manufacturers, retailers should take? And that's been on our core perspective. Yeah.
And I know that quite a lot of that content that you talked about, so the weekly inflation reporting, etc., that's on the German IRI website, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, I've really enjoyed our chat today, Christoph. So thank you so much for your time.
Very welcome, Chloe. It's been a pleasure for me.
We wish you all the best and stay safe and well. And I will say bye-bye for now. Thank you.
Take care, Chloe. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.